Hello, welcome back to the We're Not From Hollywood podcast. I'm Brandon Reines.
And I'm Faizel John, and today we have Agent 97 himself with us, actor, director, Stephen Pace. How you doing?
Great, great. Thanks for having me on the show, guys. Appreciate it.
I've worked together a couple times, Steve. You've been in a very small roles in a couple of my films, and then next thing you know, you're making your own movies. And so we wanted to talk to you about that. So why don't you just start off telling us how you first became interested in filmmaking and how you got into it?
Well, let's see. So I've always been creative my whole entire life. I'm originally from Halifax, so back in my Halifax days, I was one of the things I did on the side as a sideline is I was a caricature artist. I did that on the Halifax waterfront,
No way.
and yeah, so I did that for quite a few years. I've done that periodically in Edmonton since I've moved out here, but kind of semi-retired from the caricature business. But that's kind of the start of it, I guess, because ultimately I ended up going back to take digital animation training in Halifax. I managed to get a government grant for that. And so I took that course, and that's really kind of what wet my whistle, so to speak, about putting together, looking at a movie and seeing how it's structured and how it's put together from beginning to end, shots. And yeah, that was kind of the beginning of it. And then when I came out here to Edmonton, I got involved in the cosplay scene for a few years and did a number of characters. And that's kind of when I discovered, just by happenstance, I guess, the fact that there were these things, fan films out there. And then I got to thinking that, hey, I have a few good ideas. Maybe I could do that. And so I reached out to some people, and that was kind of the beginning of it.
What were your characters what were your main characters that you cosplayed as?
Well, I was known as Edmonton Batman. So
You got the voice.
yeah, I was Edmonton Batman for a long time. And then I sort of branched out. I did a number of different things. I did uh, Leonidas from 300. Yeah, that's about 35 pounds ago. But anyway, so I did him. I did Mad Max. I did Mad Max with my wife. She was the Tina Turner character from Thunderdome. So we did that. I've done Mysterio from Spider-Man. I've done Braveheart, Mel Gibson,
It's strange.
and
I can see you as Mysterio. Like, even though he's got like a fishbowl head, like I can kind of you have that presence a little bit.
he was absolutely my favorite character as a kid. And I've always kind of had a thing for costumes, and I remember distinctly watching that 70s cartoon, the Spider-Man one, the original one, which I still think is a great cartoon. And just that costume, I don't know what it was about that costume. It just resonated with me. The fishbowl and the eyes. Yeah, I just love it.
Don't forget Macho Man.
Oh, Macho Man. Yeah. Macho Man was kind of born out of the pandemic. I had kind of thought that maybe I wanted to do him for a while, and I tried to get other cosplayers excited about doing a wrestling thing. So eventually they got on board, but really just sort of out of boredom, I decided to do the Macho Man thing. And I was, kind of a wrestling fan, not somebody that knew every single thing about wrestling from the 80s, but I love the 80s stuff. And I thought I could pull off a Macho Man because of my build. I had a similar structure to him, and I had the beard at that point, and so he's comfortable to play. He's fun to play. Just a lot of yelling and animated movement. So yeah.
So your first, is it your first short film, Return of the Phoenix? Was that your first time making kind of like writing and directing your own short film?
It was. I think when I first started to do these fan films, and I've done a total of three, I think, fan films, uh, and I got involved with. This is a podcast where I can name drop, is it?
It
Oh,
is.
please. Yeah, I was gonna ask you what the fan films were.
Yeah. So the first fan film I did was called The Ride, and that was done through Guerrilla Motion Pictures. Sam Reed and Justin Kuber. After I sought out different people that were willing to do this, they were the ones that really kind of got behind it and were interested in doing it with me. So I formed a friendship with them at that point, and they're great guys. And so that was the first one, and that was really sort of an homage piece to a one of my favorite Miami Vice scenes in the series, the writing scene to the Phil Collins song, "Something in the Air Tonight." So I really loved that scene. So what I did was I came up with this idea to put the Joker and Harley Quinn in the roles of Crockett and Tubbs in that particular short film, and I took over sort of a side assignment as Batman. I made it work anyway, and that little short film still holds up pretty well, I think, to this day. And so that was maybe in 2016. So basically, I kind of started off slow, probably like a lot of people do. You know, the wheels were kind of going slow right out of the gate, and I wasn't sure necessarily where I was going to go with it. And then I did a couple more fan films with them. I think the last two I did get the director credits on it, and from there I moved on to another short piece that I did with Julie Whelan. That was another sort of homage piece to another scene from Miami Vice. Big fan of Miami Vice. Super fan.
So where did the inspiration from Return of the Phoenix? I mean, I feel like I can guess, but I want to hear like where the inspirations from Return of the Phoenix came.
Well, you know, it's like I can't speak for other filmmakers necessarily and what motivates them, but in my particular case, it's things over the course of my lifetime that have inspired me, that I've loved. And, you know, that's not a super, super long list, but one of them is James Bond movies. I like the spy genre movies, Bond and John Wick, and all of the movies that you kind of fall into that category. And so I knew that on a really small budget, you weren't necessarily going to get the decadence that you could get with one of the larger balance, the big budget movies. But I think considering what we're working with, we did a pretty okay job with the whole thing. Pretty happy with it.
You know what? In terms of like a spy movie look, I'm gonna say you came pretty damn close. Like if you
Yeah,
don't
thanks
feel
so
like you
much.
hit it, then I can't say you hit it, but like I'll say you came 80% or like 90% because like I'm trying to think of other spy films I've seen recently, but like it has that like that cool, like very I'm trying like super vibrant hallways and like the angles that you picked and everything. You did a pretty good run
Yeah,
of it.
it was like amazingly shot, like just the way it looks, like the sets, the lighting. Like
Was it mostly a blue color tint over it all? Because like I'm trying to establish like most of it was like pretty cool.
It was, you know, every project that I've worked on, I do my own storyboards, and they're at the end of the day, they end up being, you know, kind of like a 2D movie, cartoon, and I try as much as possible. I mean, things happen where you can't duplicate a drawing, but that's where I try to really think of the angles and the colors and things like that that I want. So, you know, that's one of my strengths, I think, is I have a pretty good vision of what I want, and often that again is inspired from things I've seen in other movies. Like if I see something that I think looks really great, a shot, an angle, a color, then I just might freeze frame it and then stick it in a file folder that I can refer to later, and then try to incorporate that into something that I do in the future.
When did you start drawing? Like I'm assuming that's the first like creative skill you started developing. When did that start?
uh well, my dad could draw really well. So if you believe in the nature versus nurture thing, it probably came from him. And I'm somebody that, you know, as early as grade 3, grade 4, people started noticing how well I could draw. And that carried on, you know, kind of really throughout my whole life. And people telling me that you should do something with that. And, you know, I followed a more traditional work path and didn't go into art specifically, but that manifested itself, like I said, in the fact that I ended up working as a caricature artist and, you know, did all kinds of festivals and gigs. And so I've had some pretty interesting adventures doing that over the years. You know, probably thousands and thousands of drawings of mine are out there at this point from the years that I really focused on that. And it was always a sideline too, but it made me a pretty decent chunk of change working on the side doing that. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
you consider yourself like you kind of transition from artist to filmmaker and that's your thing, or are you still kind of doing them both, or like how do you what do you consider as your main profession now?
Uh, I kind of consider myself now to be an indie filmmaker. I haven't really decided whether or not my focus will strictly be short films or whether there's something else. It's just sort of a path that I'm following. Where whatever the universe kind of falls in my pathway, throws in my pathway, I'm kind of going with it. So it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I did all that art for so many years that I kind of consider myself in semi-retirement with that. But ultimately, the word gets around somehow every year, and I end up getting a handful of gigs as a character artist every year. So, and I'm not gonna walk away from that completely in that sense. So I do that, but I think that somebody that has artistic ability and artistic sensibility can really transition well into filmmaking, because you have that ability to see how something unfolds, not only in an art sense, but in a structural sense. Like I've always said that when it comes to somebody that has a lot of natural raw ability doing something, whether it's art or something else, there often ends up being sort of a marriage between your natural raw ability and then the technical know-how that you attain, as you go along. And so that's kind of where I'm at, I think, now with filmmaking. As I went into it with, artistic ability, I had a certain set of skills, a certain set of strengths, and I didn't necessarily know that much about some of the technical aspects of it and some of the set etiquette and some of those sort of things. But I'm learning as I go along, so it's been fun.
Yeah, because it's kind of similar. Like when I first really started doing the creative stuff, like say 2011 or 12, I was doing comic books. I did comic books for a few years. I
Yeah,
can't draw,
that's
but I
awesome.
could write them, and then I would hire artists. And as that started going, and then I got back into screenwriting, that turned into filmmaking. But now that takes up so much of my time that the comic books kind of I'm almost like retired from that, but I do miss it, but I can only have time for so many things. So it seems like you kind of followed a similar path where one kind of like one medium led to another, and now that's your main thing. And the other ones, it's a backup that you could still do, but filmmaking is, I'm sure a lot of work. It takes up a lot of time. So trying to juggle
Oh
multiple
yeah.
careers, be like trying to be, you're in a band, but you're also making movie. Like you're going to be you got to pick one to really focus on. Otherwise, like they're all going to suffer.
Yeah, it's definitely very, very time consuming, and especially if you have a lot going on in your life and you have an otherwise full life, it can be very time consuming in a lot of ways. Some of the artistic parts of it that we were talking about, those are some of the things that I really enjoy. Kind of bringing something from nothing to the point at which you have a crew when you're filming it. That is thinking of an idea, writing the story, writing the lines, putting the script together, doing the storyboard, and then some of the I guess you'd call them, I don't know if you'd call them soft skills, marketing skills, but that ability to bring people together, to recruit people, bring people together, network, get them to be on your side, rooting for your project, everything that I know you can completely relate to. And then moving on to the actual filming. The actual filming, I found at this point, having done a number of these projects, can be sometimes kind of exhausting. If I was 25 years old, maybe it would be less exhausting, but sometimes you're 8, 10, 12 hours, especially if you have a limited budget, because you have, one crack at it. You're not going to go back and do 3 reshoots or anything like that. It's just not feasible. So the long hours are almost necessary. So that's the part of it that I do enjoy, but it's pretty physically exhausting. And then when you get, of course, to the other side of that, you're into the editing of it, which is I find lots of fun again, because you're bringing your editing skills and your art into that, and then the marketing, all the marketing and everything that goes with that. So yeah,
Did you do the opening animation for Return of the Phoenix? Was that your work?
it was. Yeah.
Oh, that was really good. I really enjoyed that opening sequence. Normally, I don't like long opening sequences, but I was just like, this is really well animated. I wonder if he like did it himself. So what
Yeah,
made
I questioned whether that was, although I thought it was, really a really great opening and pretty elaborate. I questioned again, because you're trying to get the right sort of temperance with a short film, whether or not that was too much, too elaborate, rather than just going with something that's a little bit more short and right into the film. But I liked it so much, I decided to stick with it regardless.
Good choice. So I know you talked about doing the animation course and doing the fan films, but what made you pick film over all the creative mediums, like specifically ones that you can do solo with way less resources? What made you pick film?
I just think that, I'm somebody that, like again, over the course of my life, I've always been a big fan of movies and love movies. I like particular directors. I'm inspired by their work, inspired by the look and how they do things. And so it was just sort of a belief in myself that I could do something that was, sort of similar and put my own stamp on it. Just a belief that, I had the ability to do something that was, really, really good with a little practice. And yeah, there's some stress that goes along with that, stress to do with the money to make it and a bunch of other things. But yeah, it's having the ability, the tunnel vision to kind of go through all of that to get to the other side. So yeah, I'm really, really loving it so far. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry.
No, I think you answered it perfectly. I think that it's just sometimes people just have that drive to like, I got to see this on screen. I got to build it. I've always said like, and I think you touched on it a little bit, but like that process of like coming up with an idea, writing the idea, putting together the script, like it's about as close as we can get to magic because you're like conjuring out of nothing. You're bringing all these things together.
Oh yeah, I get a big thrill out of the fact that you initially have something that is just a story written in words on a page with drawings that accompany it, and then you get to the point where this is filmed, this is edited, and what was in your mind is now out there as a movie, and I just think that's fantastic. So yeah, and there's a certain amount of ambitiousness that has to go along with that. I mean, if you're somebody that is shy about putting your stuff out there, shy about trying to recruit people and doing what it takes to get one of these projects done, then maybe quickly you disappear from the scene. But I think that I have those abilities, so I'm forging ahead.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like part of like the pride that comes from it isn't just how good it turned out, but it's just the fact that you were able to complete it. Like let's say where there's hot box or grotesque, like it just started with, like you guys said, like an idea. And then just the amount of resources you have to pull together to get the end product made, regardless of whether or not the movie's any good, it's still like, holy shit, like we put all this effort into it. Whereas something like writing a book, like writing a novel, which I've done, it's still an accomplishment, but that's just me by myself. Give me enough time, I can do it. But all of a sudden, when you have like 100 people involved and you have to, raise money and you have to rent spaces and you have to combine all these people's talents, like I think part of the thrill and part of the reason you want to do it again is like you just like going through that. It's like it kind of like it tests your metal, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I mean, we've all three of us have made films before, and we know how hard it is to pull all those resources together. Some people will watch the end product and judge it based on how good it is, but they don't see all the work and
All
effort
the
that had
effort
to go
in
into
it.
making
Yeah.
it. So it's like, regardless if it's any good, just the fact that the movie was somehow went from idea to being finished, you deserve credit even just for that. And to go through that and then do it again, like you said, like most people, a lot of people, they do one film and then they're like, that was way more work than I thought it was. And they kind of just disappear from the scene. Then there's people that do it over and over and over again. And they deserve some sort of, a kudos for that because it's difficult.
Yeah, that's it exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's something where, sometimes to get to the end of things that are challenging, things that can be great at the end, you've got to be willing to do what it takes to stay the course. And I also sort of find it an interesting challenge. Like the more I do this, the better I seem to get at it. And so there's something also the belief that you're sort of cutting your teeth on some of these earlier projects, and as you learn more about all the various aspects of it and how to put it together and how to move through the various stages, you get better and better and better. And based on the assumption again that you have the creative ability to put something that good out there, then at the end of the day, that's kind of what keeps you going with it. The fact that, hey, I'm getting kind of a handle on this at this point.
Now, speaking of doing it again, you have another project coming up in the works right now called The Hearse Driver, right?
I do.
That's a horror film. Was that a so you switched from spy, not switch, but like you had a spy film and now you have a horror film. Was that a conscious switch you made? Sorry, was that a conscious switch you made? Was that something, did you have a horror script already sitting and you were like, now it's time for this guy?
Well, yeah, again, it sort of comes back to all the different things that I've loved over my lifetime movie wise, and I've always been a big horror movie fan. Going all the way back to the old Hammer horror movies and Rosemary's Baby and a bunch of movies like that. So I've always been a big lover of the horror genre, and also in terms of a certain strategy for your movies. Horror is a good genre to get into because it's extremely popular. So I think have a better chance of getting a lot of eyes on it compared to some other genres, even if the movie's well made. So, that's a fairly minor consideration. But yeah, I had some ideas for a few different stories, and this was one of them. And yeah, there were a few different creative inspirations that went into this Hearse Driver movie from movies I've seen over my life. And yeah, I think it's a pretty good little story. And we've got the perfect actor playing the Hearse Driver. So
Yeah, I've
Are you
seen some clips from it. Jordy sent me a short clip. He said he had your permission to to show it, and it looked freaking cool, I would say, for lack of a better word. It looks scary. It looks yeah, it looks very well done. I can't wait to see the finished movie.
are you in the post-production stage or are you guys still filming through it?
we have one more short little thing to do tomorrow evening, actually. But that's only going to take us about an hour. But everything else is in the can, so to speak. And yeah, I've actually started the editing process just today, and probably have it done pretty soon. Have a number of different plans for it. Different things. Haven't decided on exactly what I'm going to do with it yet, but a bunch of different things. And I'll consult with the cast and crew to see, kind of what their thoughts are. Go from there.
Yeah, and you had a cameo in Grotesque 2 and I'm Haunted 2, both of which I'm Haunted 2 has already been released. Grotesque 2 is coming out soon. So what was your experience like that, just being on set for someone else's film?
I liked it. I mean, you were very welcoming, reaching out to me, and I also kind of like to do some acting as a little bit of a hobby. And it's a similar thing to the filmmaking, only in the sense that you embark on a new experience and you kind of go with it, see where it takes you, try to improve as you go along. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, the movie in the little pub that we did, that was the one where I think I gave Faizel a shove when he came up to me.
You did.
Yeah, Bruiser sitting at the table.
I just finished just yesterday. I finished the first draft of the script for I'm Haunted 3, and I'll tell you now, we might need you back for another little cameo if you're open to that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do enjoy doing the little acting projects on the side too. Try to be fairly objective in terms of my acting performances. It's again something that I think that anybody that is doing that at that level, you can always improve. You can always get better. So from that standpoint, that's how I kind of look at the acting thing, and it's fun.
What advice do you have for others out there who want to get involved in filmmaking?
Well, I would say don't get discouraged if you take an idea to a few different people and they tell you that it's several thousands of dollars, because that was my first idea that I had. That's what I was told over and over again. But it's perseverance, the belief that somebody's going to believe in your project, somebody's going to take it on, and it's not going to throw you into bankruptcy. That would, I guess, be my advice. And just believe in your ability to do what you need to do to get your film done, and your whole idea that it will be good and people will be interested in it, they'll like it, and they'll enjoy it.
Awesome. That's great advice. So thanks for being on the show, Steve. We're looking forward to your next project, and everyone should watch Return of the Phoenix. It's on Steve Pace's YouTube channel. Definitely check that out. and I'm sure we'll have you back on the show hopefully after we finally get a chance to watch The Hearse Driver.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Hearse Driver. Again, I worked with Julie Whelan, third project working with her. Very much enjoyed working with her again. Very committed to the craft. Great actress, great person. And this particular time, I worked with a different cinematographer I hadn't worked with before, Hadi Suji. I hope Hadi, I got your name pronounced correctly. I told him I'd throw him a shout out there. So anybody looking for a talented cinematographer, he's your man.
Great. Well,
Noted.
thanks for coming on the show, and we'll see
Okay.
everyone next time.
Okay. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye bye.
Okay. So yeah, that was a fun interview with Steve. It's always good to see I consider him a new Edmonton filmmaker. 'Cause I wasn't so much aware of the fan films he was talking about. I didn't really notice kind of him in the scene until Return of the Phoenix came out. So but it's good to see other people out there kind of following their dream and making cool stuff here in the city.
Yeah, I saw the Miami Vice homage on his YouTube page when I was looking up Return of the Phoenix. I saw the Miami Vice homage, and I was just like, oh man, this looks really good. I didn't realize Guerrilla Motion Pictures was behind it, but it looks great. And yeah, it's wild to me how many people decide like how many different backgrounds everyone comes from, and then everyone decides, no, I'm going to do this incredibly difficult, resource intensive that only produces a commodity that's consumable in 15 minutes or an hour and a half. Like,
Yeah, so I think Steve's got a bright future ahead of him, and he's making more shorts, and maybe in the next couple of years we'll see him make his first feature.
oh man, if Day of the Phoenix is where he starts, then like I'm excited to see where he goes.
Yeah, yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff ahead of him, I think.
Speaking of good stuff, I know you're excited to review today's movie.
Yeah, yeah. We Faizel, funny enough, had never seen Predator before.
Nope.
Which I just assume everyone's seen it at least 100 times, like me. But
Do you know what? I've seen Prey, the one that came out recently, but I have not seen Predator 1. I've not seen Predator 2. I haven't seen Alien versus Predator. Those are Alien versus Predator 2, right? Never seen
yeah,
any of those. So
well, we
I
got
feel
a
like
bunch
I
of new
need to
movies on your
like
list.
fix that.
So yeah, I mean, I've seen Predator so many times. It's one of my favorite movies, but I watched this as an excuse to watch it again. I was like, well, we're going to be discussing it, so I should watch it again. I probably watch it like every few months.
You gotta have
Since I
one of
was
those movies.
12.
It's like a comfort movie, right?
Yeah, it's like a comfort movie. I remember the first time it was like when I was very little, probably like 8 or something. It was on TV, and I remember I was looking. It was like on a Sunday, and I was looking forward to watching it. I was going to watch it with my dad, and at the last minute, he's like, "You know what? I'm thinking it's probably too violent, so I'm not going to let you watch it." And I was like, "Oh my God!" So for years, not years, but I was probably a teenager before I
Because you
finally
couldn't
saw it.
watch movies on demand when we were growing
Yeah,
up. You had to
yeah.
wait till they were on TV or in the theater. Like,
Yeah, so yeah, well, it wasn't just as easy as doing it behind his back. I had to wait until I was old enough to rent the video, and
yeah.
so even part of me now is like, hey, guess what, Dad? I'm gonna watch Predator, and you're not gonna stop me.
I've seen it a bunch of times, and I've made my own violent movies.
But yeah, it's so yeah, I'm kind of glad you got to watch it, and yeah, I kind of want to just discuss it because it is. I don't know if I'd say it's unique, but it did come from a period of time in the '80s where I think we touched on this in the last episode where the action movies were about big, huge, tough guys acting super macho.
Oh man,
And this movie is kind of the epitome of that.
Carl Weathers and Schwarzenegger's arms in this movie take up so much room in the frame. Like they are massive human beings. But
Yeah.
like, who played man? But like, it's wild. In one scene, they have Arnie standing next to the Predator, and like, I'm not sure if it was like a tall guy or if they had the guy on stilts or if it was just like a camera thing. But like, Arnie looks small next to the Predator, which is no small feat.
Yeah, they had this really, really tall guy in the suit. He was just like
How
7 foot
tall is that
something.
guy when he makes like Arnie look like a short guy?
Yeah, he was just one of those guys. It might have even been I could be wrong, but it might have been the same guy in the alien costume or what, something like that. But yeah, there's this guy. You can look him up online, and he's just like 7'6" or some
Jeez.
crazy thing. Originally, it was supposed to be Jean-Claude Van Damme as the Predator. There's actually footage of him, like they shot stuff
Really?
of him in it. Of course, he's not a very tall guy,
No.
and it looked pretty stupid. And they correctly were like, okay, this isn't working, and then they recast some enormous guy in the costume. But yeah, the Predator, not only was he big, but just his movements, the way he moved, was very cool.
Were decisive. Do you think the scenes where he's invisible and he's cloaked up? I was watching that through and I was just like, do you think that was like a guy in a green screen suit and then they painted over that? Like, how do you think they got that effect?
I don't know how they did that. It was a different era with more limited special effects, so I'm not sure how they did some of it, but it kind of looked good, even as his heat vision. It
Yeah.
wasn't up to like today's standards, but I kind of prefer it in a way. Like it was just kind of simple effects, and yeah, his like wavy invisible mirage look. I'm not sure how they did it, but it looked cool.
I feel like you could replicate it, at least today, technology wise. You could replicate it. It looked really good even still, but like you could do it in a green screen suit, I think I would
Yeah,
imagine. And
there's probably simpler ways to do it
I
now,
was
but
watching it through and I was just like, I wonder how they would have done this in the 80s. Can you imagine? That would have been like days of shooting just to get it there.
yeah, I'm sure they put a lot of work into it, and it was, I wouldn't say revolutionary, but like just that look of the Predator, just that little tick 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 sound he makes, and just the
Yep.
invisible way he looks and his heat vision,
His
that still
face,
it influences a lot of things these days. And yeah, so does the the way his face looks, like
it
that
looks
influences a
very
lot of
good.
alien makeup.
It
Yeah,
doesn't
that
look
looks
like a
very good.
mask or a costume or anything at all. It looks like a big space bug.
Yeah, they really did a good job on that, and the story itself like was fairly simple. There's a big action scene near the beginning, and then it's just the Predator picking off the guys one by one. They didn't need, kind of as the series goes, they start adding like more and more elements and making it more and more complex, and I think it almost like takes away for it. I miss it when it was just a simple story of like a group of
Predator
guys in
shows
the
up.
jungle getting picked off.
I have to say, Bill Duke, man. I've seen him in so many movies. He is the least likely like quote unquote actor looking guy. Like, but he always does his job so well. He's the guy who was like with the giant spinning rail gun and he was just like firing it. He always does such an amazing job when he's on screen.
Yeah, and I kind of like because they have that thing in there. They never really got into the guy's like backstory, which I like because you don't need it. You just
No,
here's
no, no.
them doing stuff, but they kind of touched him and Jesse the Body Ventura. They were like very good friends. There's even I've read some online things where people are assuming they had some sort of like gay relationship, and that's why they had their thing. Which I think that's I mean maybe, but I think that's just to read too much into it. I think they were just good friends, and it kind of shows that as tough as these guys are, they do have a soft side, right? And his like best friend basically gets killed, and he's
Yeah, and he's
noticeably
like
upset
all
about it.
fucked up about it.
Yeah, which is like it just shows that as macho as they are, they're not like completely one note characters that have no like humanity to them. It's like, you know, they do. He even says he's like, Schwarzenegger's like he was a good soldier. Bill Duke says like, yeah, he was my friend. It's kind of like they just have that soft moment, which just kind of adds to the movie.
It also shows them scared, which like so I thought this was interesting when I watched it was like it shows these big tough guys and they're like charging into the jungle to rescue these guys and take out the drug dealers. I can't remember. I was gonna look this up if it was like Iran Contra. I was trying to figure out what period that the kill the drug dealers was happening in. But anyways, they're going in and they're like super confident of themselves. They're super like, we don't care. We're just gonna mow everything down. And then after like 3 or 4 encounters with the predator, they're like terrified and they're like moving slower and they're like keeping their eyes out open. And it was a very interesting shift seeing that and seeing like these big giant like can't do nothing guys like feeling like scared and trapped and like almost getting into fights with each other just because of how much they're arguing.
Yeah, I think it's like they've dealt with humans before. They've been in gun battles and they're very good at what they do and they're confident, but now they're dealing with something that they've never dealt with before and they don't even know what it is, but they're smart enough to quickly pick up on it that it's like, okay, he's using the trees and it's not human. And even guys like Billy, who are like, the toughest of the tough guys, all of a sudden he's like, he even says, he's like, I'm scared, like we're all
Mhm.
gonna die. So they're like, oh shit, like our toughest guy is scared. Um, and it just kind of it shows that like it wouldn't have worked so well if they didn't show any fear, if they were just tough the
No.
whole time. It's like they kind of knew what they were in for, and it just kind of shows they have a human side, but it also makes you cheer for them because they're like, fuck this, we're gonna fight back against this thing. They're not just gonna run and cower, they're gonna try to set traps for it. They're gonna, try different things. And at the end, Schwarzenegger is like, you know what, like all my guys are dead. I'm gonna like full on fight this thing by myself.
Well, I thought that was really cool when he figures out, oh, the mud can hide me, and then he's like, oh, damn it, spoiler, by the way.
Yeah.
It's a 40-year-old movie, so spoilers. But like when he figures that out, and then he starts making all the traps and stuff, and it was just like there's mood shifts in the movie that you can see where like it's like all adrenaline and all like testosterone, and then they meet the predator and they have a couple interactions, and suddenly it's like very claustrophobic and scared. And then Schwarzenegger finds out that he can hide from it, and then it feels a little uplifting. And like, I'm gonna look this up right now, but I was also like, the soundtrack like also plays along with that. There's a lot of moments where there's like that like quick violin stab or something like that when they have their like tense moments, but then towards the end everything starts to get super uplifting.
Yeah, the music reminded me a lot of like Rambo 2, Rambo 3. It was around that same era where it was like similar type of macho
Alan
kind of movies.
Silvestri.
Yeah, Alan Silvestri. Yeah, it had like the perfect soundtrack. Because I remember you when we discussed Heat, and you were
Mhm.
saying how you hated the soundtrack because it was like distracting. So it's good to see a movie where the soundtrack like fits the movie.
And it's not in the background. It's not like, because there's movies where the soundtrack is in the background and it just plays a little bit. This is like a character in the movie, and it like you can't ignore the soundtrack, and it works really well.
Absolutely. And it's like I always say that like if you could pick a scene that epitomizes the tough guy musclehead action movies of the 80s, it's the scene where they're all just shooting at the trees for a solid 2 minutes. It's like the 80s peaked with that scene in that movie, and it was never the same again. And it's such a good scene that yeah, anyone who hasn't watched the movie has to watch it to see what we're
Oh
talking
man.
about.
Bill Dukes does not stop screaming through that whole scene. How many takes do you think they did of that? Like of him, they're just like, all right, Bill, do it again.
Yeah, and it's kind of he keeps holding down the trigger on that minigun even
Yep.
after it's out of bullet. It just keeps spinning and spinning silently for a little while before he finally stops. And I think that just kind of it just sums up how scared they were, but also like it was such a it's one of those scenes where when people talk about the movie, they always like reference that part because
It's
it's
pretty arresting. It's like the peak 80s. I think you're right. It's where like all the explosions and everything leads up to just like, here you go, motherfuckers. 2 minutes of a rail gun just clearing away bushes.
and it's kind of different now watching because I've seen it so many times, so I know all the surprises. But the first time people were watching that in the theater, where you first see that Predator like take off its helmet, you see its
Hmm.
face for the first time, and even just the way they build it, because at first all you see is the Predator's point of view, like with his heat vision. You don't even see
You
him,
don't
and
even
then
know
when
what's underneath. You
they,
can kind of see the outline in like some of the invisible moments. You can kind of see what it looks like, but not even.
yeah, and it's like, and then slowly, I think it's by the time you see him, Schwarzenegger covered in the mud, I think that's when you first really see the Predator not camouflaged, and you see him walking around. You see a full view of him head to toe. Um, and then after that, then you see his face for the first time. But those are all like very good reveals. And it seems like in the newer movies, it's kind of like they assume you know what it looks like, so they just don't even try to build it. They just
They just
here's the
go on with
Predator,
it.
here's three Predators or however many they have, and it just doesn't have that pacing that made the first one so good.
That is fair. I mean, I know everything, even going into watching Predator, never having watched it, I knew the story beats that were coming just because it's so much in pop culture. I have no idea what I'm gonna go into with Predator 2. I don't think I know any like reference to it at all. I'm going in with a blank slate.
which is good. I might even watch it tonight after the hockey game.
Hell yeah.
Just to be I love I know there's people that don't like Predator 2, but I freaking love it.
I,
Um,
you know what, especially the second movie sometimes, especially if it like expands on the story a little bit. You don't need to go too far, but if you expand just a little bit, I find the second one is usually Hellraiser 2 is my favorite Hellraiser of all the Hellraisers.
yeah, that's not sure if I'd agree, but
Are you a Hellraiser 3
I
fan?
don't disagree. Yeah, like the first three, it's like my favorite. It changes day to day, but
Fair enough.
we'll do Hellraiser on a different episode.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I'm interested to see what you think of Predator 2 because it does like changes it from the jungle to Los Angeles, and it goes from a
Oh,
small group of guys to there's gangs and police and CIA and government agencies, and really
and is it still one
expands a
Predator?
lot. And there's still just the one Predator. Um, so it could have gone. Honestly, it has a lot of elements in it that I normally don't like how they complicate simple things, but they did it so well, at least in my opinion, that it's a good movie. But I'll be interested to see what you happen to think of it.
All right. Well, I mean, I know, like you said before, you have no perfect 10, and like I'm waiting. One day there might, but where would you put Predator? Is that a 10?
It's I'd say 9 point
Nine
something. Yeah,
9.9.
yeah, 9.9. Yeah, maybe not that. Yeah, 9.3. I don't know. I don't know how official these ratings are, but it's kind of what I'd give it. It's like it's always been one of my favorite. Funny enough, Elena Hlebnikova, who we had on the show a couple episodes back, is a big Predator fan too, and her and I have had some discussions about it.
I want to get into the lore of Predator because, like I said, I've watched Prey and I've watched Predator 1, so I've seen either ends of the spectrum now. And like, obviously, one takes place in 1988, which was then present day, and then the other takes place in pre-contact Canada. I want to know what the hell happens in between those two situations.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where the Predator would come to Earth as one of the many
For a
places it would
hunting
go.
ground, right?
It would just come, yeah, once in a while. And it got to the point where, back in the more primitive cultures, they had no way of like kind of reporting it. But once it started happening in more modern day, that's why by part two, it's like people are aware of it. The military's aware of it. So they're kind
Okay.
of starting to deal with it because I guess you can only come and start picking people off with advanced technology so many times
Before
before,
someone notices and like, wait a minute.
yeah, they're gonna find bodies and be like, okay, this is not a human weapon.
I mean,
So
Arnie got away. I assume he went to tell everybody.
yeah, and actually in part two, he was supposed to come back for part two, but he ended up, for whatever reason, he didn't over money or something, he didn't come back. So they had Gary Busey playing the character he was supposed to be.
Wait a minute,
Um,
Gary Busey is in Predator 2? I did not know that. Oh my
yeah,
God, I
yeah,
gotta
he's
watch this.
yeah, it's the good part. But yeah, there's a lot like they really expanded like throughout there's comic books and everything. They really expanded on
Well, there was Alien
the
versus Predator
lore.
comic books, right? There was a whole
Oh
spin-off
yeah,
of that stuff.
there's that. Yeah, and then I mean there's just straight up Predator comics. There's also Alien comics. And one of my I had this omnibus. It was like a really thick omnibus Predator comic that I read, and it was kind of cool. And one of the endings was I really liked the ending because it was the Predator was in like New York City or whatever and killing people, and all of a sudden like these Predator ships appeared, and it kind of was leading towards like, oh, it's going to be all out war between the humans and the Predators. But then it started raining and the Predators just left, and then they're kind of like, oh yeah, like they're not, it's not personal to them, they're not here to go to war, they're just here to hunt, so if the weather turns bad they're just gonna leave.
That's actually really funny. I didn't even think about that. They're like,
Yeah,
well,
so it just
the
kind
game
of
was
ended
called for
on a,
weather.
yeah, and it's just like, oh yeah, they're not here, like they have no personal vendetta against humans, they're not even gonna it's not like they're gonna put up a fight against our military because they they just don't want to, they're just here to hunt, so if it's things turn against them they're just gonna go back home. So um yeah, so what would you give Predator on a scale of 1 to 10?
I think I'd give it a 9. I give it a very strong 9. What I mostly liked about it, and I feel like people I think you were touching on it too a little bit through your thing, but like people get really into. I watched Late Night with the Devil a while back, and I was talking to someone about it, and they didn't like it because they felt it didn't go deep enough into the lore and into the story. Whereas I liked it because it was such a fun and enjoyable movie. And that's the same way I feel about Predator 1 is like it's so fun and it's so enjoyable and like it doesn't have to be super smart and super intellectual and all the way up here. Like sometimes I just like seeing explosions and like I don't know if people count on that enough how enjoyable a movie can be sometimes.
Yeah, and it's like I like even the very opening scene, like the first shot of Predator is like you just see the spaceship fly by and it launches a little pod, and that's it, nice and simple. By the time you get to part four, like the Predator, all of a sudden there's like this like space battle going on and they're flying through a portal. Like they just have to make every moment like way over the top.
How many
Whereas the
Predator
Predator was
movies
like
are there?
simple.
How many
Sorry,
Predator movies are there total? Like Predator, not counting the Alien versus and so forth.
there's Prey is number five.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and then there's the two Aliens versus Predator. Yeah, it's Predator, Predator 2, Predators, The Predator, and then Prey.
Oh, so they did the aliens thing, huh? That's so
Yeah,
confusing.
as someone who does it, who didn't follow along as the movies came out, like they would not have, they wouldn't, other than Predator 1 and 2, like you really can watch them in different order, I guess, because they don't, like, they kind of got, I don't know, it makes it confusing, but,
It does, because I always used to think I was just like, is Alien and Aliens just the same movie? When I was a kid, I was just is it just like a different name situation?
yeah, it'd be hard to. It makes it easier when you number them, but it's one of those things. I mean, you could kind of look it up online and see the order, but even
Yeah,
with Prey, like Prey's the prequel, so technically you could watch it before, but you could watch it at any point because it's just a standalone story.
I would agree. If you want to know what we think of Predator 2, tune on in.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll be discussing that next episode, and we'll have our surprise guest for next episode too, and guess we'll see everyone on the next show.
Hell yeah. You know what I'm gonna say? If there's movies or series you want us to review, put them in the comments. Put them in
Yeah,
the comments
absolutely,
and
do it.
maybe we'll review them. If they're good enough. Make sure they're good.
Yeah, I don't want to watch. I don't want to watch anything terrible, but but then again, sometimes I like terrible movies.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, bye everyone. See you next
Take it
time.
easy.